The rental notice shook in Ryan's grease-stained hands. $400. His Honda Civic wheezed smoke into the evening air, while his last customer drove away in a brand-new BMW, laughing. Just scrap it, buddy. Buy something decent. Decent. With $247 left in his account. The doorbell rang. She stood there like a walking contradiction. Thrift store backpack hanging off one shoulder, $200 Nikes gleaming on her feet. No college kid mixed Salvation Army fines with designer shoes. No broke student carried herself with that quiet authority. "I'm here about the room," she said, and her voice belonged in boardrooms, not cramped rental offices. Lucas burst through the kitchen door, peanut butter smeared on his cheek, clutching his sandwich dinner. "Dad, is she going to live with us?" The girl's eyes lingered on his 8-year-old son, too long for a stranger, too focused for casual interest. Something flickered behind her careful smile, something that made Ryan's mechanic instincts whisper danger. But $400 was $400, and desperate fathers couldn't afford to trust their gut. "I'm Zoe," she said, stepping into the cramped living room, where mismatched furniture told the story of a man trying to make do. Her gaze swept over everything, the water stain on the ceiling, the faded family photos turned face down on the mantel, the toy cars scattered beneath Lucas's art table. "Second year at Millbrook College, art major." She pulled a thick roll of 20s from her worn jeans pocket. Brand new bills, crisp as autumn leaves. First and last month up front, $800. Ryan stared at the money. Too much cash for a broke college student. Too convenient for someone who'd just called an hour ago. Zoe opened her backpack and withdrew a leather sketchbook that probably cost more than Ryan made in a week. The drawings inside were masterful. City scenes from ground level, homeless camps under overpasses, children's faces pressed against bus windows, poverty seen through wealthy eyes. "I draw what matters," she said quietly. Lucas crept closer, magnetized by the images. "That looks like the playground where Mama used to take me," he whispered, pointing to a sketch of rusty swings. Zoe's hand stilled on the page. Her breathing changed. "Your Mama had good taste in playgrounds," she said, and something in her voice made Ryan's chest tighten. No stranger should speak about Melissa like they'd known her. "The room's upstairs," Ryan said, leading them past the narrow staircase where family photos once climbed the wall. Now only nail holes remained, like bullet wounds in the paint. "Used to be my wife's sewing room." He couldn't bring himself to say studio. Couldn't admit that Melissa had dreams beyond mending his work shirts and hemming Lucas's school pants. The door creaked open to reveal a space frozen in time. Measuring tape coiled on the windowsill, fabric scissors gleaming in afternoon light. Zoe walked to the window overlooking the backyard, where a tire swing hung motionless from an oak tree. "She made beautiful things here," Zoe said. It wasn't a question. Ryan's throat closed. "How did you—" But Zoe was already counting out money, laying 20s on Melissa's old cutting table like she owned the place. That first week, Zoe moved through their house like smoke. Gone before Ryan woke, returning after Lucas's bedtime. No friends called. No boyfriend knocked on the door. She left no trace except the faint scent of expensive perfume that didn't match her thrift store persona. Lucas asked about her constantly. "Where does Zoe go, Dad? Why doesn't she eat dinner with us? Do you think she's lonely too?" Ryan found himself listening for her footsteps, watching for the flicker of light under her door. The silence upstairs felt different now, occupied but empty, like a held breath waiting to be released. On Thursday night, he climbed the stairs to ask about rent policies, and found her door cracked open. Inside, Zoe sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by dozens of sketches. All of Lucas. Lucas laughing. Lucas eating cereal. Lucas building Lego towers with intense concentration. A stranger documenting his son's life like evidence for some unseen trial. Ryan backed away quietly, but his mind raced. Why was she drawing his son? What did she want with their small, unremarkable life? The questions followed him to bed and haunted his dreams. The crash came at 11:37 p.m. on a Tuesday. Ryan bolted upstairs to find Zoe sitting in a pool of broken glass, blood seeping from her palm. The old family photo lay shattered, the last picture of Melissa, Ryan, and baby Lucas at the hospital, all of them glowing with new parent exhaustion and joy. "I'm sorry," Zoe whispered, cradling her injured hand. "I was just looking." Ryan knelt beside her, carefully picking glass from her skin with the same precision he used on delicate engine parts. Her hand was soft, uncalloused. These weren't the hands of someone who worked for $8 an hour at a bookstore. "Melissa would have liked you," he said, surprising himself with the admission. Zoe's breath caught. "She was beautiful," she said, studying the torn photograph. "Lucas has her eyes." But Ryan noticed Zoe was crying, and strangers didn't cry over other people's dead wives. Lucas appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from his eyes. His Superman pajamas hung loose on his thin frame, another reminder of Ryan's failures as a provider. "What happened? Is Zoe hurt?" The 8-year-old rushed to her side with the fearless compassion of childhood. "Don't cry, Zoe. Crying makes everything hurt worse." He wrapped his small arms around her neck, and something shifted in the room's atmosphere. Zoe closed her eyes and held him back, like she was memorizing the weight of his embrace. "Your mom used to hug you like this, didn't she?" she whispered against Lucas's hair. Lucas nodded solemnly. "She smelled like flowers and paint. You smell like expensive soap and secrets." The observation hit Ryan like cold water. His 8-year-old son saw through Zoe's disguise better than he did. "What kind of secrets?" Lucas asked. Zoe's eyes met Ryan's over the boy's head. "The kind that keep families apart," she said. Everything changed after that night. Zoe began joining them for dinner, cooking elaborate meals that belonged in restaurants, not run-down rental houses. She taught Lucas to sketch, her patience infinite, as he struggled with proportions and shading. "Art isn't about being perfect," she told him, guiding his small hand across the paper. "It's about seeing things differently." Ryan watched from the doorway as she showed his son how to capture light, how to make shadows dance, how to find beauty in broken things. Lucas bloomed under her attention like a plant finally getting proper sunlight. But Ryan noticed other things too. The way Zoe automatically reached for the most expensive items at the grocery store, then caught herself and chose generic brands. How she instinctively expected service, then remembered to say please and thank you. The calluses she didn't have. The tan lines from jewelry she no longer wore. 3 weeks in, Lucas spiked a fever that sent Ryan into panic mode. Single parenting meant every crisis felt like the end of the world. "We need to get him to the emergency room," Ryan said, Lucas burning up in his arms. "No," Zoe said firmly, already dialing her phone. "Dr. Hamilton makes house calls. He'll be here in 20 minutes. House calls. In 2024. Ryan stared at her while she spoke with the authority of someone accustomed to immediate medical attention. "Yes, it's urgent. The Mitchell residence on Maple Street." She rattled off symptoms with clinical precision, then hung up and met Ryan's questioning gaze. "My grandfather had a good relationship with Dr. Hamilton," she said quickly. Too quickly. When the doctor arrived in his Bentley, Ryan saw the way his eyes widened upon seeing Zoe. "Miss Harper," Dr. Hamilton said carefully. "I wasn't expecting to find you here." Zoe's face went chalk white. "You must be mistaken," she said. But the damage was done. Harper, not whatever last name she'd given Ryan. Harper, the name that owned half the state, that appeared on buildings and charity galas and political fundraisers. The name that meant power and money and everything Ryan's world was not. Dr. Hamilton examined Lucas with professional thoroughness, prescribed antibiotics, and left with obvious reluctance. As his Bentley pulled away, Ryan felt the weight of unspoken questions pressing down on them all. That night, after Lucas's fever broke and Dr. Hamilton left, Ryan confronted the truth he'd been avoiding. "Who are you really?" he asked Zoe, as they sat in his kitchen drinking coffee that cost more than his usual grocery budget. "I mean, who are you when you're not pretending to be broke?" Zoe's hands trembled around her mug. Steam rose between them like the ghosts of all her unspoken lies. "I'm exactly who I said I am. A college student who needed a place to stay." "College students don't have family doctors who drive Bentleys." Ryan's voice stayed calm, but his mechanic's mind was putting pieces together. Expensive shoes, perfect teeth, soft hands, the way she moved through the world expecting doors to open. "They also don't pay rent in brand-new 20s or cook meals that belong in 5-star restaurants." Zoe stood abruptly, pacing to the window where moonlight painted her silhouette silver. "Some things are better left alone, Ryan." "Not when they involve my son." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Zoe turned from the window, and in the pale light, Ryan saw tears tracking down her cheeks. "You want the truth? I'm Charles Harper's daughter. Harper Industries, worth about $50 million when he dies, which won't be soon enough according to the tabloids." The name hit Ryan like a physical blow. Everyone in the state knew Charles Harper, real estate mogul, political power broker, the kind of man who bought politicians and sold dreams. "Jesus Christ," Ryan breathed. "You're that Harper. I ran away 2 years ago when he tried to force me into business school. Cut me off, changed the locks, hired private investigators to drag me home. But I kept running because I'd rather be broke and free than rich and caged." She wiped her nose with the back of her hand, a gesture so human it broke Ryan's heart. "The trust fund kicks in monthly whether I want it or not. I donate most of it, keep just enough to survive." "But why here?" Ryan asked. "Why my house, my son?" The question he'd been avoiding crystallized between them. Zoe's face crumpled. "Because I've been watching you both for months. I know that sounds crazy, but hear me out." She pulled out her phone, scrolled through photos. Images of Lucas at school pickup, Ryan working in his garage, the two of them at the park, the grocery store, the library. "I wasn't stalking you," she said quickly, seeing Ryan's expression. "I was studying what real family looks like. You and Lucas have something I've never seen before." Ryan felt the bottom drop out of his world. "You've been watching us? Taking pictures of my son?" "My father hired investigators to find me. One of them became obsessed with documenting perfect families. She showed me hundreds. But you and Lucas were different. You were genuinely happy, despite having nothing." The kitchen felt smaller suddenly, walls closing in around Ryan's growing understanding. "So you decided to what? Study us like lab rats?" "I decided to learn what love actually looks like," Zoe shot back, her voice cracking. "Do you have any idea what it's like to grow up with everything except the one thing that matters? My father bought me ponies and penthouses, but he never once sat with me while I drew pictures. He never made me peanut butter sandwiches for dinner because that's all we could afford." Ryan stared at this girl who'd infiltrated his life with lies and good intentions. "You used us." "I loved you," Zoe whispered. "Both of you. That wasn't supposed to happen, but it did. Every drawing lesson with Lucas, every dinner we shared, none of that was fake. It was the most real thing I've ever experienced." Before Ryan could respond, headlights swept across the kitchen window. Expensive engines purred in his driveway, multiple cars, the kind that didn't belong in his neighborhood. Zoe's face went ashen. "He found me," she breathed. The doorbell rang with imperial authority. Ryan opened it to find a man who commanded attention like gravity commands falling objects. Charles Harper stood 6 feet tall in a suit that cost more than Ryan's annual income, flanked by 2 men who screamed professional security. Behind them, a black Mercedes and matching SUV idled like sleeping predators. "Mr. Mitchell, I presume," Charles said in a voice that brokered no argument. "I'm here for my daughter." His eyes swept Ryan's modest living room with the dismissive evaluation of someone accustomed to buying and discarding lesser things. "Though I see she's been playing house quite convincingly." "Zoe's upstairs," Ryan said carefully, every instinct screaming danger. This wasn't a worried father. This was a businessman reclaiming stolen property. "She's an adult. She can make her own choices." Charles laughed, a sound like expensive crystal breaking. "My daughter has been making poor choices for 2 years, Mr. Mitchell. Living in squalor, pretending to be something she's not, associating with—" His gaze lingered on Ryan's oil-stained hands, his second-hand clothes, the obvious markers of working-class life. People who clearly see opportunity when it presents itself. The insult landed like a slap. "I don't want your money," Ryan said. "Neither does Zoe, apparently. Maybe that's why she ran." "Ran?" Charles stepped closer, and Ryan caught the scent of power, expensive cologne, and implied threats. "She didn't run, Mr. Mitchell. She's having a tantrum. A very expensive, very public tantrum that's affecting my business relationships." Lucas appeared at the top of the stairs, drawn by the commotion. His hair stuck up from sleep, and he clutched the stuffed elephant Melissa had bought him years ago. "Dad, what's happening? Why are there scary men in our house?" Charles Harper's expression softened slightly as he took in the 8-year-old. "You must be Lucas. Zoe's told me quite a lot about you." The casual familiarity in his voice made Ryan's blood freeze. "She calls me every week, you know. Tells me about the wonderful man teaching her about real family values, the beautiful boy who's shown her what unconditional love looks like." Each word felt like a knife twist. "She's been reporting to you?" Ryan asked Zoe, who'd appeared behind Lucas like a guilty shadow. "Not reporting," Charles answered for her. "Staying connected. Despite her dramatic gestures, Zoe knows where she belongs." He reached into his jacket and withdrew a folded document. "This is a simple agreement. You sign it, accept $50,000 as compensation for your trouble, and agree to have no further contact with Zoe. In return, I make your financial problems disappear. New garage equipment, Lucas's college fund fully established, medical insurance that actually covers emergencies." The paper felt heavier than it should have when Ryan took it. $50,000. More money than he'd see in 2 years of back-breaking work. Lucas's future secured with a signature. "And if I don't sign?" "Then I make other arrangements," Charles said pleasantly. "Millbrook is a small town. People talk. How long do you think your business would survive if word got around about the kind of man who takes advantage of vulnerable young women?" The threat was velvet-wrapped steel. "I've done nothing wrong." "Haven't you? A grown man, alone with an impressionable teenager, taking her money, letting her play surrogate mother to your son? The optics are unfortunate, Mr. Mitchell." The room fell silent except for the tick of Melissa's old wall clock. Ryan looked at the contract, then at Zoe's tear-streaked face, then at Lucas clutching his hand with desperate faith. $50,000 could change everything. New equipment for the garage, reliable transportation, security he'd never been able to provide. All he had to do was walk away from the first woman who'd made him feel alive since Melissa's death. All he had to do was crush his son's renewed happiness. All he had to do was prove that Charles Harper was right about the kind of man desperation created. "I need time to think," Ryan said finally. Charles checked his expensive watch. 24 hours, Mr. Mitchell. I'll return tomorrow evening for your decision." and Zoe's departure. The convoy of luxury cars pulled away, leaving Ryan's modest neighborhood feeling violated by their presence. After they left, the house felt different, smaller, shabbier, marked by the contrast with Harper money. Zoe sat at the kitchen table, head in her hands, while Lucas hovered uncertainly between his father and the woman who'd become his surrogate mother. "I should go," Zoe whispered. "This is exactly what I was trying to avoid. My father destroys everything he touches." "Running away got you into this mess," Ryan pointed out, though his voice lacked conviction. The contract lay on the table between them, like evidence of his inadequacy. $50,000. Lucas's college fund. A real future instead of day-to-day survival. Maybe he's right. Maybe you do deserve better than this. He gestured around their humble kitchen with its mismatched chairs and outdated appliances. "You could have anything, Zoe. Why would you choose this?" "Because this is real," she said fiercely, looking up with red-rimmed eyes. "This kitchen has love in it. That's worth more than my trust fund." Lucas climbed onto Zoe's lap with the unconscious trust of childhood. "Are you going to leave us like Mama did?" he asked quietly. The question hit like a physical blow. "Your mama didn't leave you on purpose, sweetheart," Zoe said, smoothing his hair. "She got sick. That's different. But you're choosing to leave." Lucas's 8-year-old logic cut through adult complications. "That's worse, isn't it? Choosing means you don't love us enough to stay." Zoe started crying again, holding Lucas tighter. "I love you more than I've ever loved anything. That's why I have to think about what's best for you." "What's best for me is having a mom again," Lucas said simply. "Even if she's not my real mom. Even if people think it's weird. I don't care what people think." Ryan watched his son defend their unconventional family with the fierce certainty of childhood, and something inside his chest cracked open. When had Lucas started thinking of Zoe as his mother? The next morning brought Charles Harper's escalation in the form of systematic destruction. Ryan's phone rang constantly, clients cancelling contracts, apologizing but citing concerns about the business's reputation. Word was spreading through Millbrook's tight-knit community with the speed of wildfire, something about inappropriate relationships and taking advantage of vulnerable young women. By noon, Ryan's phone had stopped ringing entirely, not because the campaign had ended, but because there was no one left to call. 3 years of building trust and reputation destroyed in one morning by whispered rumors and calculated lies. "It's working exactly like he planned," Ryan told Zoe as they sat in his empty garage, surrounded by tools that might soon be repossessed. "He's systematically destroying everything I've built." "Then we leave," Zoe said simply. "Pack up, take Lucas, start somewhere new." "Run away?" Ryan cut her off. "Like you've been running for 2 years? What kind of life is that for Lucas?" That afternoon, Lucas came home from school unusually quiet, his small face set in determined lines. "Jimmy Peterson says you're a bad dad," he announced, dropping his backpack with more force than necessary. "He says his mom heard stuff about you and Zoe, and that maybe I should live with different people." The words hit Ryan like physical blows. His son was being bullied because of choices Ryan had made. "What did you tell Jimmy?" Ryan asked carefully. "I told him his mom's a liar and he's stupid for believing her," Lucas replied with 8-year-old logic. "Then I got sent to the principal's office for using bad words, but I don't care. Nobody talks bad about my family." His fierce loyalty was heartbreaking and humbling. This child had already lost one parent and was watching his world crumble again, but his first instinct was to defend the people he loved. "Lucas," Ryan said gently, "you can't fight everyone who says mean things." "Then what do we do, Dad? Just let them win?" That evening, Charles Harper made his final play through Child Protective Services. The social worker who knocked on Ryan's door was sympathetic but thorough, armed with anonymous reports about Lucas's welfare and environment. "I'm sure this is just a misunderstanding," she said, but her eyes catalogued everything: the modest furniture, the patched clothing, the signs of a family making do on very little. "We've received some concerns about the living situation here." The investigation was professional and devastating. Yes, Lucas was healthy and loved and doing well in school, but the house needed repairs Ryan couldn't afford. The refrigerator was mostly empty because payday was still 3 days away. All the small failures of poverty now viewed through the lens of potential neglect. "Mr. Mitchell clearly loves his son," the social worker wrote in her report. "However, there are legitimate concerns about financial stability and the presence of an unrelated adult female in the home. Continued monitoring recommended." The resolution came from an unexpected source. Lucas, who'd been unusually quiet during breakfast, suddenly stood up and walked to the phone. "What are you doing, sweetheart?" Zoe asked. "Calling the scary man," Lucas replied with 8-year-old determination. "If he wants to talk to grown-ups, he should talk to me too. I'm part of this family." Before anyone could stop him, he'd dialed the number he'd memorized from hearing it so many times. Somehow, impossibly, Charles Harper answered personally. "Mr. Harper, this is Lucas Mitchell. I need to talk to you about Zoe." Ryan and Zoe stared at each other in panic as their 8-year-old took control of the conversation. "I know you think my dad's not good enough for your daughter, and I know you have lots of money, and we don't have very much. But Zoe's happy here. Really, really happy. Doesn't that matter?" There was silence from the other end of the line, then Charles Harper's voice, gentler than they'd ever heard it. "Lucas, how did you get this number? I listened when you called before. I'm good at remembering numbers." Lucas climbed onto a chair so he could reach the phone better. "Mr. Harper, do you love Zoe?" "Of course I love her. She's my daughter." "Then why are you making her cry all the time?" The question hung in the air with the devastating simplicity that only children could achieve. Ryan heard Charles Harper's sharp intake of breath, the pause that suggested Lucas had hit a target no adult had been able to reach. "Sometimes adults have to make difficult decisions, Lucas. Sometimes we have to do things that make people sad in order to keep them safe." "But Zoe's not safe with you," Lucas replied with matter-of-fact certainty. "She's scared with you. She cries when she talks to you on the phone. She only smiles when she's here with us." Another pause, longer this time. "I can give her everything, Lucas. Everything she could ever want or need." "She doesn't want everything," Lucas said patiently, as if explaining something obvious to a slow adult. "She wants to draw pictures and cook dinner and help me with my homework. She wants to be part of our family. Mr. Harper, when my mama died, I thought I'd never have a mom again. Then Zoe came and she reads me stories and teaches me to draw and makes me feel safe when I have bad dreams. If you take her away, it'll be like losing another mom. Please don't make me lose another mom." The silence stretched so long that Ryan wondered if Charles had hung up. Then, quietly, "Lucas, may I speak with your father?" Lucas handed over the phone with the satisfied expression of someone who'd said their piece. Ryan took it with trembling hands. "Mr. Mitchell." Charles's voice was different now, stripped of its earlier authority. "That boy of yours is quite remarkable." "Yes, he is." "He's also right. About Zoe being happy with you. About her being scared of me." Charles sighed, and for the first time, he sounded like a tired father instead of a corporate raider. "I've been so focused on protecting her from making mistakes that I never asked what would actually make her happy." Ryan felt the conversation shifting into uncharted territory. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe I've been the mistake she needed protection from." 3 days later, Charles Harper sat in Ryan's modest kitchen, looking strangely diminished without his usual armor of expensive suits and implied threats. He wore jeans, actual jeans, and a simple button-down shirt that made him look like any other father visiting his daughter's boyfriend. The transformation was jarring and somehow hopeful. "I owe you all an apology," he began, his hands wrapped around a mug of coffee that probably cost less than his usual breakfast. "I've spent so many years protecting Zoe from the world that I forgot to protect her from me." He looked at his daughter, who sat stiffly beside Ryan, her guard still firmly in place. "I was so afraid of losing you that I nearly destroyed the one thing that actually made you happy." Lucas, perched on Zoe's lap with the casual affection of family, studied Charles with curious eyes. "Are you still scary?" he asked with typical 8-year-old directness. Charles smiled, and it was the first genuine expression Ryan had seen from him. "I'm trying not to be, Lucas. I have a proposal," Charles continued, addressing Ryan and Zoe equally. "Not a business deal or an ultimatum, but a genuine offer." He pulled a folder from his briefcase. A different briefcase, Ryan noticed, worn leather instead of polished metal. "I'd like to invest in Mitchell Auto Repair. Not buy it, not control it, but help it grow. New equipment, expanded facilities, maybe even a second location eventually." Ryan felt his defenses rise. "I told you, I don't want your charity." "It's not charity. It's investment in my daughter's happiness." Charles opened the folder, revealing business plans and financial projections. "I've been researching your work, Mr. Mitchell. Your customers speak very highly of your integrity and skill. You have a reputation for honest work and fair prices. That's exactly the kind of business I want to support." He looked directly at Ryan. "I'm offering you a partnership, not a handout. You run the business, I provide the capital. We both benefit, and Zoe gets to stay where she's happy." The offer was generous, almost beyond belief, but Ryan heard the subtext. "And if Zoe and I don't work out? Then you still have a successful business, and I still have a daughter who knows what real love looks like." Zoe spoke for the first time since her father's arrival. "What about the rumors? The people you turned against Ryan?" Her voice was carefully controlled, but Ryan heard the anger underneath. "Social services, the cancelled contracts, the damage to his reputation." Charles had the grace to look ashamed. "Already handled. I've personally called every client who cancelled, explained that there was a misunderstanding based on incomplete information. Most have agreed to give Mitchell Auto another chance." He rubbed his temples. "The social services investigation is being withdrawn due to anonymous tips proving to be unfounded. Funny how money can make problems disappear as quickly as it creates them." "And the rumors about Ryan will be replaced by rumors about my generous investment in local businesses and my pride in my daughter's choice of partner." Charles's smile turned wry. Amazing how quickly narrative can change when you control the channels of communication. It was a masterclass in damage control, but Ryan sensed genuine remorse beneath the efficiency. The conversation continued through the afternoon, tentative trust replacing hostility, as Charles revealed himself to be not the monster Ryan had imagined, but a man who'd confused control with love for so long that he'd forgotten the difference. They talked about business plans and family dynamics, about the future and the mistakes of the past. Lucas, with the adaptability of childhood, gradually warmed to this version of Charles Harper, especially when the older man produced a sketchpad and asked to see Lucas's artwork. "You have real talent," Charles told the boy, studying a drawing of their house with 3 figures standing in front: Ryan, Zoe, and Lucas, holding hands like paper dolls. "Your perspective is excellent, and you understand how to use space to create emotion." "Zoe taught me," Lucas said proudly. "She says art is about feelings, not just making things look real." "Your Zoe is very wise," Charles agreed, glancing at his daughter with something like wonder. "She always was the artist in the family. I just never understood what that meant. 6 months later, Mitchell Auto Repair had expanded into the building next door, employing 3 full-time mechanics and serving clients from 3 counties over. The Harper investment had become local legend, proof that sometimes fairy godmothers came disguised as reformed corporate tyrants. Ryan worked longer hours but worried less, knowing that Lucas's future was secure, regardless of what happened to aging Hondas and temperamental transmissions. Charles visited monthly, ostensibly to review business reports, but actually to spend time with his daughter and the boy who'd become his unofficial grandson. He'd bought a small house in Millbrook, not the mansion he could afford, but a comfortable cottage with a workshop where he was learning to build furniture with his own hands. "Retirement project," he claimed, though everyone knew it was really an attempt to understand the satisfaction Zoe found in creating beautiful things from raw materials. Lucas had taken to calling him Grandpa Charlie, a nickname that made the intimidating business mogul melt into grandfatherly puddles of affection. On a warm Saturday in October, exactly 1 year after Zoe had first knocked on Ryan's door, the 3 of them sat on the front porch watching Lucas play with the neighborhood kids. Normal life, Ryan thought. The kind of ordinary happiness he'd stopped believing in after Melissa died. "Any regrets?" he asked Zoe, who was sketching the children's game with quick, sure strokes. "About giving up the trust fund lifestyle for this?" Zoe looked up from her drawing, pencil smudged on her cheek, hair escaping from its ponytail. She looked nothing like the polished heiress she'd been born to be, and everything like the woman she'd chosen to become. "The only thing I regret is waiting so long to find you," she said simply. "Both of you." She reached for his hand, her fingers warm and strong from months of real work. Cooking, cleaning, building the kind of life that trust funds couldn't buy. "I used to think family was something that happened to you, like winning a lottery. Now I know family is something you choose, something you build day by day." As if summoned by their conversation, Charles's car pulled into the driveway, not the Mercedes of their first meeting, but a practical sedan that could navigate Millbrook's pothole-riddled streets without announcing his arrival to the entire neighborhood. He emerged carrying grocery bags and wearing the expression of a man who'd discovered that buying ingredients for Sunday dinner could be more satisfying than buying companies. "How are my favorite people?" he called, and the genuine warmth in his voice still surprised Ryan sometimes. This was not the same man who'd threatened to destroy their lives a year ago. Love, it seemed, was transformative in ways Ryan had never imagined. "Grandpa Charlie!" Lucas abandoned his baseball game to race toward Charles, launching himself into the older man's arms with complete trust. The sight never failed to amaze Ryan. His son, who'd been so careful around strangers after Melissa's death, treating Charles Harper like beloved family. "I drew you a picture of the new garage," Lucas announced. "Dad says we might hire another mechanic soon because we have so many customers now." "Speaking of fixing things," Charles said, setting down his grocery bags with an expression Ryan had learned to recognize, the carefully casual look of a man about to make a gesture that meant more than he wanted to admit. "I have something for you, Zoe." He pulled a small wrapped package from his jacket pocket. Inside was Melissa's old wedding ring, the one Ryan had quietly sold months ago to pay for Lucas's school supplies. "I thought you might want to have this back," Charles said to Ryan, his voice carefully neutral. "Family heirlooms should stay in the family." The gesture was characteristically Charles, grand and emotional and slightly manipulative, but coming from a place of genuine love. Ryan took the ring with hands that trembled slightly, remembering Melissa's laugh and the dreams they'd shared. "Thank you," he said quietly, and meant it. But instead of slipping the ring into his pocket like a treasured memory, Ryan turned to Zoe. She was watching him with eyes that held understanding and patience, and a love that didn't demand anything in return. "Melissa would have liked you," he said, echoing words he'd spoken months ago in a moment of grief and recognition. She would have loved the way you take care of Lucas, the way you make our house feel like a home again. He held up the ring, letting afternoon sunlight catch the simple band and make it shine. This belonged to someone who believed in love enough to build a life on it. I think she'd want it to keep doing that job. Zoe's breath caught. Ryan. Marry me, he said simply. Not because it's practical or convenient, or because your father approves, though I'm glad he does. Marry me because I love you and Lucas loves you, and somewhere along the way, we became the family we were all looking for. Around them, the world continued its ordinary magic. Children playing in golden light, neighbors calling greetings, the comfortable sounds of a community at peace. But in the center of it all, 3 people who'd found each other across impossible circumstances were writing the next chapter of their love story. Zoe said yes, of course. Lucas whooped with joy and insisted on calling everyone he knew to share the news. Charles wiped his eyes and claimed it was allergies, then immediately began planning a wedding that would be tasteful but not ostentatious. Family-focused but with excellent catering. The engagement lasted 8 months, long enough for Charles to overcome his horror at the idea of a backyard wedding, and for Ryan to adjust to the concept of having a father-in-law who could buy small countries but preferred to spend Saturday mornings teaching his step-grandson to fish. They were married on a perfect June morning in the garden behind their house, surrounded by friends and neighbors and the kind of extended family that forms when people choose to love each other despite their differences. Lucas served as ring-bearer and best man and honorary minister, declaring with 8-year-old authority that he now pronounced them husband and wife and the best family in the whole world. Charles walked Zoe down the aisle, his face glowing with pride and wonder at the woman his daughter had become. 2 years later, Ryan stood in the same backyard watching Lucas push his baby sister on the swing set Charles had installed for safety reasons, and definitely not because he was a grandfather who couldn't resist spoiling his grandchildren. Zoe emerged from the house carrying 10-month-old Melissa, named for the woman who'd taught them all that love could survive loss and bloom again in unexpected places. The baby had Ryan's dark hair and Zoe's artistic temperament, already showing signs of the creativity that ran in her mother's genes. "How's my favorite mechanic?" Zoe asked, settling beside Ryan on the porch swing they'd bought with their first profits from the expanded garage. "Tired?" Ryan admitted, though he was smiling. "Good tired. The kind that comes from building something that matters." He gestured toward their life, Lucas helping his grandfather plant tomatoes, baby Melissa grabbing at sunbeams, Zoe's art studio visible through the window where she taught weekend classes to local children. "Sometimes I can't believe this is real. We get to keep it because we chose to keep it," Zoe reminded him, shifting the baby to her shoulder where Melissa promptly fell asleep. They sat in comfortable silence, watching their children play and their improbable family continue its ordinary miracles. Ryan thought about the man he'd been 2 years ago, desperate, lonely, convinced that his best days were behind him. He thought about Zoe, running from a life of privilege toward something she couldn't even name. He thought about Charles, learning that love meant letting go instead of holding tight. And Lucas, the wisest of them all, who'd known from the beginning that family wasn't about DNA or money or meeting other people's expectations. It was about choosing to stay, choosing to care, choosing to build something beautiful from whatever materials you had available. "Do you think she knows?" Ryan asked quietly, nodding toward the baby who carried Melissa's name. "About the first Melissa? About how we all found each other? I think she knows everything that matters," Zoe said softly. "The love that built this family. The people who made it possible. The miracle of second chances when you thought all chances were gone." She looked at Ryan with eyes that held their entire history. "I think love recognizes love, wherever it comes from, however long it takes to find its way home." The sun was setting over Millbrook, painting their modest house and ordinary life in shades of gold and contentment. In the distance, Charles's laughter mixed with Lucas's giggles as they discovered something fascinating in the garden soil. Baby Melissa stirred against her mother's shoulder, making the small sounds of dreams and possibility. And Ryan Mitchell, who'd once believed that broken things stayed broken, understood finally that some stories don't end. They just keep getting better, one chosen moment at a time. This was their story now. Not perfect, not easy, but real and lasting and built on the radical decision to love each other exactly as they were. In the end, that was enough. More than enough. It was everything they'd never known they were looking for, found in the most unexpected place of all, a modest house on Maple Street, where love had learned to call itself home.